This summer marks 3 years since the Ice Bucket Challenge first swept social media with the goal of raising money for ALS research. Beverly native and Boston College star athlete Pete Frates is the man who started it all. At the age of 27, Pete was diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, a debilitating condition that right now has no cure, but researchers are making progress. Just a couple of weeks ago, the FDA approved the first new drug treatment for ALS in 22 years, which has the potential to slow symptoms. And since 2014, the Ice Bucket Challenge has raised more than $220 million for the ALS Association and its sister organizations around the world. But at the same time, those who live with ALS every day, the personal financial burden is simply out of reach, as much as $1 million a year. Joining me now are two people who know this far too well. Nancy Frates is Pete Frates' mother. Nancy, it's good to see you again.
Thanks,
Stephen Winthrop, who was diagnosed with ALS in 2013, was named last month as chair of the ALS Association Board of Trustees after winning the organization's National Hero Award in February. Stephen, it's good to meet you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
How did it feel when you heard about that announcement about that drug a month ago, slowing the progress of the disease?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I had to keep it a secret because I've known about it for quite a while.
So when you first heard about
it,
how did it feel? When I first
heard about it, you know, we didn't know it was going to come to the United States as quickly as it did.
From Japan, right?
We had heard about the clinical trials in Japan and the efficacy that they saw. And the new FDA went over there and told them to put in a marketing application. It'll be available in August.
For $145,000 a year?
Well, we only got one drug, Jim, so hopefully we're going to get help with that.
So on the macro front, for lack of a better expression, the good news is progress is being made. On the micro front, we learn about what families like yours are facing. When I read the Salem News story, talking about as much as $3,000 a day to take care of your son, who has helped raise millions for others, give a sense of what are his needs that amount to that amount of money?
So the largest part of that amount is his home health care. Because we choose and we want to have Pete taken care of in the home, we do not get any coverage for home health care. So he requires 24/7 care, and we have nurses that are in. He lives on machines.
Well, speaking of machines, ventilator is one of those machines.
Yes, they are.
The vast majority of ALS patients don't live on a ventilator, and why don't they live on a ventilator?
Pure and simple money. That many patients are faced when they get to the point where they are considering a ventilator, the horrible choice between certain death, believe it or not, taking steps including divorce in order to maintain family resources.
So you qualify, you essentially bankrupt yourself so you can qualify for Medicaid or a nursing home or something. But if you don't decide to find the money for the ventilator, you die, correct?
In countries like Japan, the numbers are flip-flopped. It's about 3/4 of patients in Japan are on a ventilator. So it's clearly, we're not that different from the Japanese.
You're the first chair of the board who is an ALS patient, right?
That's right.
That's a pretty big deal for the community, is it? Well, you might not admit it. I know Nancy thinks it's a very big deal. What's the scope of the problem? We all know about Pete. What are we talking about here?
The two most puzzling things about ALS that I forever am trying to get across to people. One is the disease is so complicated, it's hard to have a simple and easy conversation about what the disease is, what it does to one's body. And the other piece of it is how variable it is from one person to another. I'm here 3.5 years later, sitting in a chair, walking into the studio, speaking with my own voice, and I'm in maybe the least unlucky 10 or 20% of the ALS population.
But 15 more people I read in the United States are diagnosed every single day. There's 6,000 to begin with.
Right.
So I know there are different degrees of the status of the disease, but we're talking about huge financial burdens just for average families, just to try to keep someone they love alive and as well as can be, right?
And this is likely only to increase in the future, that this new drug, Radicava, which is a good thing, it lengthens the lives of people with the disease, but it also means that very likely 5 years from now there will be many more people going through this financial hardship living with ALS in the United States than there are today.
Yeah, I know you're trying. We're going to talk June 5th. You're having an event to try to raise money for families like yours to deal with daily expenses and that kind of stuff. What if you don't raise the $3,000? What happens to your family? What happens to your kid? What happens?
Well, we have a great nursing company that we're working with. Not to belittle this thing, but I was joking with my husband when we had a little R&R in Florida and we were in the Publix parking lot, and I said, that'll be you and I at 90 pushing the carriages in the parking lot. Look, we're going to take care of Pete. We're going to make sure that he has the best care possible. Pete deserves a future. He will have a future, and we will find a way. We've been workers our whole life, and we will do that. We just want to shine the spotlight on this, that end stage, late stage, terminal patients, our system doesn't want to take care of them.
Well, it's perfect to talk about in the middle of this healthcare debate, too. Right. Is something not wrong with this picture? We're all here, the healthy amongst us, are celebrating raising hundreds of millions of dollars at the same time that, I don't know about your family, are dealing with these crushing burdens that none of us even know about. And
I'm glad you talk about it at the family level, because ALS affects more than just the patients. It does affect entire family systems, and it's devastating. It's the everyday stress and anguish of just watching this very slow motion car wreck. Hear us loud and clear. This new drug is not a cure.
It just slows the progress of the disease.
It simply slows things down.
I hesitate to ask you these kinds of questions because you are such an upbeat person. It's almost unnatural, with all due respect. Do you not resent? I mean, people like me are congratulating ourselves. We wrote a check for $100, or somebody over there poured water on their head. We feel good about ourselves. And then the Klieg lights go off, and you and your husband and your kid's wife and kid have to deal with this stuff.
Jim, we're happy, too, that you did that, and we're grateful that you did that. And that is the point, is that we are an unusual case because we had the Ice Bucket Challenge, because we have been fundraising for Pete's care, even though he didn't need it. 5 years ago, we've just been stockpiling it away. That's kind of sustained us to this point. Pete's been on a ventilator for 2 years. So this is a disease-wide problem, and
without that ventilator, he would not be alive. Is that a safe assumption?
So that, I think, is probably, Stephen and I were just talking about this. So so they take a vital force capacity and they watch as the diaphragm slows down to when it becomes perilous for the patient, right? And so when they're in peril of not being able to breathe anymore, you have the talk. That's what they call it. To go on a ventilator or not go on a ventilator. And they pretty much lay out the pros and the cons. The biggest con is the financial burden on the family.
And every time you're here, I ask you, do you feel sorry for yourself? Does Pete feel sorry for himself? And every time you say no?
No. We are blessed.
Well, she mentioned 5 years ago. 5 years hence, I mean, you're chair of the board. You have a vision of this thing. And we have this. What are we going to be talking about?
I think the biggest challenge right now, to what you were just talking about a minute ago, is that we can't let ALS become yesterday's news. That for the casual observer, they might say, oh, that was the thing where people were dumping ice water over their head. And then I think I read in the paper about a new drug. So problem solved, right? I think the biggest challenge is looking to families like the Frady's and my family and the thousands of others here in the U.S. and letting them know that we're going to be with them. And there is, hear me clear, there is a very impressive pipeline of drugs in development right now. One of the most promising things to come of this new drug is the encouraging signal it sends to the whole industry that more drugs can and will follow.
And I'm going to give the website in a minute, but on June 5th, you're attempting to raise money for families like yours to deal with the everyday cost of keeping someone they love
for Pete, too.
alive.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is, the crisis that we're at in our family. And we're gonna address it. We're grateful for people who are stepping up to help Pete. Look, Pete changed the trajectory of this disease. He's 32 years old. He has a 2.5-year-old child. He lives, and that's the thing with technology now. you can be a person living with ALS.
You're amazing, Nancy. It's great to
Thank
see you
you,
again.
Jim.
Stephen,
Thank you for having
congratulations
me.
on your election.
Thank you.
And lots of luck with your work. It's good to
Great.
see you both.
Thank you.
Again, if you want more information on the Home Healthcare Initiative and the fundraising effort Nancy just spoke about, you can visit Pete Frates, FRATES.com.